Hello warriors, welcome back to another episode of fitness advice you're not going to take anyways. This week, talking about running and a little bit about running shoes. I know we talked about shoes in our last episode, but that's okay. We didn't hit on specifics for running shoes or brands that you should look for. Before we get into the episode, don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell. Don't miss an episode. How you doing today, baby?
Super duper.
Good. So we're gonna start with how to run properly. It's a really big one. I'm not even gonna start with where to warm up or anything like that. How to run properly, because when I see people running, I see, and that's your foot slapping the ground, by the way. So how to do this so that you're not going to tear your Achilles tendon or rupture it, because that is a very long healing process. That's not good. Yes.
And specifically, you wanted to talk about the ball of the foot as opposed to on your toes, flat, or on the heel. I'm a huge, when I run, I'm a huge heel strike runner, which is not. She hates that. I hate that.
My heart hurts. My heart hurts. Running on the heel is actually what will cause things like plantar fasciitis, inflammation, and rupturing that Achilles tendon. So we want to make sure that as we're running, we're landing on the ball of the foot. When I say the ball of the foot, I'm talking about here. So your arch up through that joint, your toes should still hit the ground. But as you're landing, you should be landing softly, and your foot should actually stay at least an inch off the ground. This is why when you look at runners, they have a really, really good calf, right? The other thing is, make sure that you're lifting your knees. So first we want to land softly, and this is going to flex the calf. That's going to hopefully protect your knees from wobbling around. You need strong hips to be a good runner, by the way. So make sure you're lifting weights. We were just talking about this. Weightlifting, it makes your bones stronger. This always scares me. I hate saying it. If you watch marathon runners and you watch somebody get trampled and you look at their bones, they break so easily because they're brittle, because those people who are really into marathon running, they don't do anything else. They don't do any kind of cross training. And I think we talked about this in a prior episode. You need to do cross training. If you're going to be a good runner, you need to lift weights. You have to have more than body weight too. You need real weight, because that weight is going to make your bone marrow grow. So the bone's going to be a lot stronger. It can handle a better impact as well. And if you have strong hips, you're not going to have a wobbly knee. That knee is going to stay straight forward and track with your toes the way that it should.
And it will also assist in your coordination overall, just being aware of your body space, which a lot of people aren't in tune with. It's why it's really easy to roll your ankle when you're on a flat surface.
Yes. I follow an account called Pole Lols, LOL. And one of the things they do, it's all these dancers. We send in like fail videos we think are funny. Nobody's ever hurt, but they're funny. And one he does is a heels edition. And every time I watch these girls, and one of them will literally just be standing there, and then all of a sudden their ankle will give out, and they're like, I don't know what happened. You lost awareness in your body, and you don't have enough stability in the muscle, in other words, structure, actively to hold yourself. So you're also probably not pushing in the right spot. When you're wearing a heel, you're supposed to be pushing through the ball of your foot, just like you do in running. It's called a heel because the heel is what's elevated, right? So, rotation. Ow, there goes your ankle. Run on the ball of the foot, track with the knees nice and straight. So running on the ball of the foot, a nice soft knee too. Again, we don't want that hyperflexion backwards here. We want a soft knee, so we always keep the leg here to protect the joint, which also is going to protect your hip. And don't hit the heel. The heel should never hit the ground. I still don't fully understand, to be honest, why running shoes are like this, because you're not supposed to go, you're supposed to hit down on the ball of the foot. never heel first. So that weird drop that they have from the heel up to the toes is completely unnecessary.
It reinforces the wrong movement.
It reinforces the wrong movement, absolutely. If you're walking, you are supposed to actually walk from your heel through the arch and then up into the toes. And that's supposed to have a little bit of outward and then inward, but it's very small motion. It keeps even pressure, keeps the joints protected because the muscle then is going to activate around your VMO, which is right here inside of your knee, all the way up through your hips. So if you're running like that, ow,
Yeah.
right? A lot of people go, oh, I hate running, it's so painful. Are you running right? So you want to take a look at how you're running. So run proper before you do anything else. I don't care if you're warming up, learn how to run proper first. That's super important. So tips for better running, actually. Do a good dynamic warm up. And I'm not talking about just doing a standing quadruped stretch, which is where you bring your leg back behind you. A lot of people will overstretch this movement anyways, and they go, oh, like this, and then that extends the back. You still have to tuck the hips, stand tall, and then pull, because this is for the hip flexor into the quad. And in reality, you want something that's going to get your blood flowing anyways. If you're moving, your tendons are also going to get warm. Your ligaments are going to get warm as well. You're going to have more blood flow there, rather than just doing some kind of static stretch, which is really good for the facial tissue instead of the muscle. It's still good to stretch your muscles. I'm not saying don't stretch them. Do it. Don't do it before you run. That's a good tip. Foam roll. Do some mobility mountain climbers, do a little core warm up. The core is your center, so if your core isn't stable, your run's probably gonna be like, right, all over the place. Like those old ladies power walking. They get their hips really going, right?
Which actually makes me think of when it comes to proper form and stability and flexibility. I don't know if you watched Jimmy Neutron when you were younger.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. The episode where Jimmy Neutron wants his dad to compete with him in the father-son thing, and he shows a graphic of his dad running normally, which is really herky-jerky and all over the place. This man trips over a dandelion. Versus when he puts on the computerized headband and has proper form. It's faster, more balanced, he has better agility and everything else. That matters.
That matters. That very much matters.
And also, talking about warming up and stretching, there are some people that are like, well, you know, if I'm ever in a situation where I need to use my speed and my power, I'm not going to have time to limber up. It's not like Zombieland. Okay. Anyway.
So I think about that.
When you are training and practicing and building, it doesn't matter that in real life you're not going to have time to limber up. You're training your body to be able to handle the situations where you may or may not be able to limber up.
Well,
it matters.
In that regard, the thing that they're actually missing is that while you're training yourself with this use stress, which is what it's called, is purposely putting stress on the body so that when you encounter a fight, flight, or freeze situation, you're going to be able to either flight the fuck out of there or fight. And your body will be ready, because over time, if you watch yogis are a really good example of this. If you watch a yogi from beginning to their current that's at least 5 years that's very into it, you'll notice that their forward fold is shit in the beginning, and then once they're hitting that 5-year mark, their forward fold cold, in other words, no other stretching, they just lean forward, is all the way forward. And that's what that really means, is to train your body to be ready for any kind of survival that you need. Yes, lift, don't just run, just like cross train. For marathons, you need to do other things. Breathing is super important as well. First thing I teach my clients that they're always grateful for is how to breathe. I was taught how to breathe when I was a kid. You breathe through your nose and out your mouth for several reasons. For one, we have nose hairs because our nose is a filtration system. The mouth is not. The nose also is slower to breathe through, so it allows you to intake more volume at once. I just showed somebody this earlier where you go. Now if I do that same thing through my mouth, That was about half the breath I just took through my nose, right? So you're actually gonna also regulate your heart rate, how much blood flows through you, at what pace it flows through you, and you're gonna moderate your energy, how much energy you're exerting. It takes energy to breathe. Do it slowly. The more you expand your lungs and then decrease them as well and let that slow expansion happen over time, the more air you're also going to be able to hold in your lungs, which is really cool. But you're also going to increase your muscle endurance and stamina over time that way, rather than just going or while you're running. We don't want either one of those. So we want that's going to regulate your pace of running. You're going to be able to go for a longer period of time.
Now see, when I kind of stumbled onto that when I was doing my half marathon, because during training and even a little bit during, again, in the keeping with the theme of fitness advice, you're not going to take anyway, I didn't train how to breathe. I do a lot of research for my own edification and for work, and I didn't look up anything about it. I'm just like, no, I know how to breathe when moving. It started to get like burning throat, weird, like the mouth felt weird, yes. And I noticed that, if you are, it doesn't matter, it's not just the myth of breathing super hard in cold air. Your lungs will burn no matter what the temperature. But if you do breathe through your nose and then out the mouth, it reinforces a natural, decent feeling balance. Mm-hmm. And if you just do your nose, you're gonna feel like you're not getting air in and out fast enough. Yeah. That is kind of the thing. Yeah, slow in, fast out, and it's a good balance.
I know balance in the body also gets thrown off, which is really bad. You harbor more bacteria by breathing through your mouth. You also reinforce certain movement patterns and breathing patterns that way that will cause like sleep apnea. You can cause tooth decay, headaches, illness. So it's actually really important to breathe through our nose and out our mouth. When you first start running, and a lot of people always want to start their fitness journeys with running, which is a great step, don't just literally get out your door and start running and bolt off. Alternate between walking for maybe a minute and then jog for 30 seconds and then go into a run for 30 seconds. Over time, that oxygen that you lack at the moment is gonna build up. The more your body gets used to it, your muscles are gonna invite in more oxygen, they're gonna have more stamina. You're gonna get more blood flow. That NO, that nitrous oxide in your system, is going to actually balance out the way that it should. And you're gonna feel that pump that you do when you lift weights, which is really cool, right? Sometimes getting a running partner. If you lack some motivation, get a running partner. Make sure your running partner also knows what they're doing. If they don't, learn together. There's nothing wrong with that. That's always fun to do sometimes, right? Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Actually worked out really well. With the half marathon, I was running with my friend Sam. I was working on running to get up to the point where I could do that kind of distance and working on my fitness. He was actually rehabbing his leg that he had messed up because he had tried to do something that I'm not going to go into detail on. He just thought it would be so cool to do this thing, and he ended up busting his knee very badly.
Yeah, I know.
So while he was working on rehabbing, because he's been a lifelong runner, and so is his mom, we were actually able to basically meet in the middle because he was already having the skill, but rehabbing the ability, and I, had the ability, but had none of the skill related to what he was trying to accomplish, so we met in the middle on that one.
That's always nice, right? When you find somebody who's already experienced, that's willing to help you out, or is willing to do it with you.
A lot easier to keep on schedule.
Oh, yes. And then my last tip for this is make sure you eat carbs the day before. I would actually recommend a couple days prior to running, because first off, you don't want to do it on the day of because it's heavy. Carbs are heavy. Fuel your body with a little more fat, avocado oils, coconut oils, nuts, stuff like that. Carbs are going to fuel the glycogen for the muscles that they need to go a long distance. That is why we do carbs prior. You also want to do that heavily prior to like a marathon or a long distance run or something like that, because on the day of, when you're eating normal again and lowering those carbs back down to where they should be, you're gonna have a lot more energy. You're gonna feel like you can go the distance. It's gonna be nice. You're gonna fuel your muscles.
Now, specifically, why do people think that they should carb load the day of? I mean, there's a scene in a book that I read a long time ago, The Curse of Lono, Hunter S. Thompson, where he talks about in, I think it was the 80s, the mindset was pile up pasta and beer before a marathon because it was cheap energy.
Yeah.
And then also, we've all seen the scene from The Office where Michael Scott pounds
the pasta,
the Alfredo right before the run. Yeah, and then vomits, as you will do.
Yeah,
So
exactly why you don't do that. Old school science, and then bro science also. It works for some people, but it doesn't work for everybody. And it doesn't work as well as we think it does, even for those of us. I'm a really high carb tolerant person. When I'm not in show, like right now, my carbs are still sitting around 350 to 400 grams per day, just naturally. That's unheard of for most people, but because my body's conditioned for that, I can do that. I can be somebody who can eat a bowl of oatmeal and then go run, because my body's just gonna tear through that shit. Most people, especially in the States, don't have that luxury. Their bodies are very used to being slow. Carbs are hard and tough to break down, and if they're not being utilized fully, they're just turning into sugar and fat, which is where that myth of carbs make you fat came from decades ago. So it's the same thing, it's just old school science. So some of these books that we have, they're either older and they still have that irrelevant science now in it, or somebody has never updated their way of thinking and kept up with their, I don't want to call it research, but just looking into the data. Go and find all of the information that is up to date and relevant. And the, what is the NCBHI, I believe, is a really good place for that. If you just go into Google and type in whatever you're looking for, let's say running and then scientific articles, it will pop up first thing, and I guarantee you a whole list that looks super boring and you're gonna go scroll is gonna pop up first. Those are the ones you need. Those are the ones that have real science. Those are the ones that have the information that you want, that they've taken decades to compile themselves.
It's related but minor off topic. If you are like, no, I just want like a 5-minute video, we're here trying that. But also, you do need to read the article, but if you have a specific question, if you have a keyword in mind and you don't want to try to read the entire article, you can always hit Control F, type in the word you're looking for. If the article mentions it, maybe you can try to find exactly what answer you're looking for, but it is worth reading the whole thing. And then coming back on topic, so if you're heavily trained, it's okay to carb load the day of because your body's used to it, but otherwise you're hurting yourself because it's carbs. Carbs don't make you fat. Misused or unspent carbs can contribute to.
So, yes and no. If you're a seasoned athlete and you're conditioned for this, my body's been conditioned for carbs since I was a child. Yes. Are you conditioned for carbs? No. If you started here conditioning yourself for carbs, no. If you started as an adult conditioning yourself for carbs, probably not. If you have amazing genetics, and there are certain genetics out there, you can handle carbs. Look at Asian cultures. They have a lot of rice, right? A lot of rice goes into their food. That's a really starchy, heavy carb for most people to be able to break down. And that one can cause a lot of inflammation in people, especially when it's white rice, right? Brown rices are better. Jasmine rice is good as well, even though it's a white rice usually. It's the jasmine in it that helps. So you want to find your carb tolerance, and just how we mentioned in episode 5, I believe, or 6, excuse me, was how do you feel after you eat bread? How do you feel like homemade bread? I don't want you to go out to the Olive Garden and have free breadsticks. How do you feel after eating some good sourdough? I feel amazing. I feel great, and I'm like, yes, let's go. right? My partner doesn't feel that way. He's like, that was delicious. I'm gonna sit right here on this couch and I'm not gonna move.
Nap time.
Nap time. Low carb tolerant person, high carb tolerant person. So those are the things you want to feel for. Also, look at your body. You can see inflammation instantly. It is something that will show. When you go into the bathroom an hour later to go pee and look in the mirror and you go, oh, why do I look a little, softer than usual? Why do I look like I'm holding more water? That is inflammation because you ate something your body didn't want. So in regards to running, you want to make sure you're eating the right foods and fueling properly, just like in any other workout beforehand. If you're a high carb tolerant person, do it. I still have my low carb tolerant people have like a bowl of oats or some sourdough toast or something before they come into sessions, because in the beginning of your day, you're going to burn that off, which is why my partner does all of his carbs after his workout right in the morning, and then it burns off by the end of the day. By the end of the day, we're eating a low carb meal for dinner that's full of fat. It's good.
Very.
Right?
Yes.
And on that regard, you can still do something like keto style or paleo style, where you have a higher fat diet and still get really great results. There are a lot of people who respond better to the keto style just because they're so low carb tolerant to begin with, that the fat was so much easier of a switch of a fuel source to go to. And that one is easier because fats do not digest in your tract, your GI tract. They go into the liver where they're then broken down and turned into ketones, right? So then it gets passed to the rest of the body and cells. That's how you get energy from fat, which is fun. And we can always do an episode on keto later because there's way more behind it than that. That's extremely basic. So.
But circling back to running, when it comes to, and I know this seems like we're going all the way back to the top of the list, but super important. I wanted to see if you could spell out for people, because you know these things and I'm not entirely knowledgeable in the anatomy, but running properly starts at the foot, but it goes all the way up. Now you talked about stretching, but let's talk about how the improper running can impact each thing on the way up.
Well, we kind of did. So if you're not hitting that ball of the foot, it's just the same as in our shoe episode, our last episode, where if you're landing flat foot, these are great shoes to land flat foot in, because when I do so, I don't feel that in my knee. This one's going to absorb most of the shock for me, which is great, but it still doesn't mean that I want to land like that, right? So as long as you're landing here, those mechanics are going to hopefully make your calf muscle fire, and that's going to hit the bottom of your knee and stabilize. And then hopefully you're also going to have some quad strength and muscle here too, so that your VMO, your vastus medialis, all the way up into your hip flexor, into your hip, and then your glute fires as well. So doing some like kickbacks, cable kickbacks or banded kickbacks, hydrants or adductors out to the side is a really good way to get your hips warm before you go run. It's more important to have that glute activation so that you don't have knees that are falling in every time you land, right? So we don't want that. We don't want toes pointed in or out. Generally, you want to be straight in a conventional stance. It's just going to take pressure away from the joint itself and take that harmful angles that we see a lot of the time in beginner runners especially, or those trying to get into marathons, so that their ligaments in the joints don't overextend. Once you hit that overextension, all that's going to happen is it's going to stay overextended. I think I used this analogy before in a prior episode where I was talking about rubber bands. Over time, they wear out if you don't take care of them, and you keep them stretched like this, and you hold it, you hold it, you hold it, you hold it for as long as you can, and you let it go, but it doesn't stretch back, and you go, what happened? Well, the elasticity wore out. You overextended it. Muscle is there to keep those elastic pieces of collagen in your ligaments active and stretchy, right? So we want that. We don't want, so again, that landing is super important. You want it all the way up. Just make sure that you're squeezing your core, squeezing your glutes. Everything, in my opinion, is a full body exercise. You have to have full body awareness. It makes a difference. I want to talk a little bit about trail running as well. Some people are trail runners. I've had clients in the past who like to go and do trails. My biggest one is proper shoes. Make sure you have proper shoes. I'm not a fan of like the finger shoes, like running in the finger shoes, because again, most people in first world countries are not conditioned to run barefoot, and that's just like running barefoot. You have a sock over your foot. That's all you do. And while it might have a rubber bottom, most of them I think do, it's not enough. What if you step on a nail, right? At least this shoe has a little bit more to go through, right? Your shoe has a little more to go through. So wear a good, sturdy, comfortable shoe. They even make trail running shoes that are nice. Bug spray. Have bug spray. I don't care who you are, protect your body. Bugs carry disease and it's gross, right? Go places that you're comfortable going, that are either near your house. If you get lost, you need to make sure that somebody knows where you are. If you want to go somewhere that you're unfamiliar with, maybe find a friend who wants to go with you. It's always good to travel in packs or teams anyways, especially when you're out on a mountainside, right? While it's really nice to connect with nature, and I love doing it too, I generally don't go hiking alone unless it's an area I know that I'm gonna have cell service in. And if something happens, I will easily be found and people know where I am. Right? I always tell them, okay, I'm going, one of my favorite spots is on Log Vista, and it's, you get to the top and you can literally see like pretty much downtown Austin. It's amazing. It's great. So I go to that one quite often. Usually when I go, I'm going hiking, my friends and family know like that's where I'm gonna be. So that's always good.
Did you want to touch on the different types of running? You brought up trail running, which obviously you know, a lot of people might think you know, it's running. I'm gonna just hyper walk. I'm just gonna do the arms and legs as fast as possible, but it really is different depending on, you know, trail running is an example. That's speed hiking. You need your coordination, you need your balance, you need your body space awareness, versus running a marathon, going for distance, versus running virtually any other time where the goal is speed.
Yes, so with trail running, especially trail running, and some marathons, I've seen them go through like forests and stuff before. So you want to make sure that you're really acquainted with the area that you're in and what you're doing. Trail running is so much different because, like you said, you're running over things. When I'm running on my trails, my eyes are still forward, but they're at probably like, if this is 100%, I'm down about 30%. My head is still up, but my eyes are down. See how that just shifted? When people don't shift, you gotta shift just the eyes, right? This allows me to use my peripherals so I can see anything underneath me and in front of me. So that when I'm running, I'm not gonna trip over something. It's also why it's really important to know the trail that you're running. And if you haven't before, I suggest taking it slow the first time and then maybe book it back on the way back, right? Have some fun with it, but make sure you're careful. Trail running has a lot of dangers with it. I've heard stories about people fall off of cliffs, people being impaled, people falling and tripping because they missed a rock and then suddenly their entire leg is just broken. This is why it's important to not go alone usually, or go on a trail that's near your house, or a really popular trail where you're not gonna run into too many people, but people will still find you if something happens, right? So running on pavement or even grass, right, in sports, very different than running up a trail. And you're right, it's more like speed hiking. And it's very exhilarating, it's very nice, but it still coincides with like mountain biking, literal like actual mountain biking, right? We did that when we were kids as well, growing up in the Northwest. That's a really big thing. It's just hiking, mountain biking, and trail running, fishing, camping. So you get acquainted with your area. That's my biggest tip there. You need to know that trail running is not going to feel the same as ground running. Your foot's gonna hit in a different spot every time. I was explaining this to a client earlier. She didn't understand why she tripped up some stairs. And I said, you wanna know a funny thing? So my dad's a builder, and I learned this when I was a kid. When you step up a step, your brain actually already knows how tall that step is supposed to be, because all steps are the exact same height. They're that way because the brain already measured it that way. That's your actual natural step. If that step is even an eighth of an inch higher, you will trip. You will trip because your brain went, nope, this step was supposed to be this high. What is going on, right? Or you're not picking your knees up. It's going back to running, you still have to pick up your knees, right? When we walk and run, we need to pick up our knees. That's how we avoid tripping. Well, that and not walking inside your hips. Don't walk into your hips.
Tell them what that means.
I call this pencil skirt walking. And when you find your hips, they're gonna be 2 fists apart. And that should put you right in line with your hips. When you're inside your hips, it means that your feet are too close together. What this does is your hips are here, and it puts and creates strain on a V here down to the knees, which is why a lot of people have issues with low back, why their knees hurt when they run or when they walk, even trying to stand. And then you know what happens? A lot of the time I also see their shins come out like this. So then they've created this kind of X shape, or they stay right in that Y. And both of those are gonna put damage on the ligaments and tendons, which is not good. This was not something we want to always avoid. So we wanna be in line with the hips. It's called stacking over the hips, which means that your hip down to your knees in the same line, and then your knee down to your toes is also in the same line. Same thing for any kind of running, any style of running, any kind of squats, deadlifts, anything where you're standing. Even if my clients are doing bicep curls, I make them stack themselves over their hips. If you're not, you're shifting weights into different areas of the body, and you're actually activating different muscles, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's good to train that, but you don't want that as you're running. Because going back to that knee protection we were talking about earlier, you hit and land wrong, right? And you don't have that sensory underneath you anymore, your body's not gonna know what to do, and you're gonna eat. Goodbye.
It's true.
Right? So, good shoes, know your area. Remember that trail running is way bumpier than ground running, and that you need to be very aware of where you're hitting that ground each time that you're taking your step. Right?
Do we want to touch on why, from a coordination perspective, maybe not an effort perspective, but a coordination perspective, it's easier to run uphill than it is to run downhill? It's easier to lift than it is to catch.
So, on that note, I wouldn't actually say that it's easier or a coordination thing. It is that gravity, right? When you're going up, the body is actually designed to push. It is not designed to pull. So when we're going down, it's pulling away, right? It's trying to stop itself. If you work on pulling motions, running backwards, pulling a sled backwards, reverse lunges, those things work you walking backwards, your body will actually have an easier time being able to run down a hill. It's also about how you're bracing yourself. And I've seen people do it where when you see people go, oh yeah, they're doing good, all of a sudden they gain too much speed because watch, they're going forward. They're not bracing anymore. They're just allowing gravity to pull them at this point. And that's what I'm saying. You're pushing yourself away from the floor, right? And that's what people have trouble with. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a coordination thing so much as it's a muscle thing, a muscle engagement thing. And also being just mindfully aware of where your body is. Again, going back to going inside of yourself and being connected, right? It's important.
Very.
Very. Should we talk about benefits of running?
Always.
There are a lot of benefits of running. I personally do not run unless I absolutely have to. Is bear chasing me? I think it's atrocious, and I commend anybody who runs. My cardio is treadmill walking like this. at like an 8. So that's a run for a lot of people, but we have those long ass legs, right? Or I just climb the stairs. So much easier. Good for weight loss, but not great for weight loss. And in regards to weight loss, that actually includes your muscle. I'm not gonna correct it and say fat loss because you're gonna lose both when you run. Cardio still eats muscle.
Now, why do people not usually get that? They think, I'm gonna run, I'm gonna burn fat, I'll reveal more muscle, but no.
Diet culture and old science. Those two are such killers for good trainers in the industry and nutritionists who know what they're talking about and keep up with current schooling. Do not buy into old school science. It is no longer relevant. It's bad. So, fat loss actually comes from building more muscle. The more muscle you have, the more fuel you burn, the more fat you also burn. The body is a car, it's a machine, it's a whatever you want to, anything with an engine, that's what it is. You could be a motorcycle, I don't care, right? So you're going to increase your cardiorespiratory system, which is great for your lungs. So when colder seasons hits, it's actually going to feel easier to breathe cold air in, as well as you're going to be able to handle that type of eustress as you're still continuing to run, right? It's going to make your blood flow better. Cardiorespiratory isn't just how we breathe. Cardio also means the heart. It means this entire chest cavity, right? We also increase muscle endurance. We hit this earlier. As you're breathing, you add more oxygen into the body, which is what it needs. Fuels it. Your blood flow increases. It can flow smoother, which is always nice, right? You have less risk of blood clots, which is always good as well. So I find it really good for active rest days for my clients who like to run. Some of them love running and they'll go run with their dogs or take a jog around their neighborhood, and that is a really good way to keep yourself active on rest days because it's a LISS, L-I-S-S, low intensity. That's really all that stands for. Low intensity exercises. It's the opposite of HIIT. So you'll have a 30% lower risk of heart disease and dying from cardiovascular, which is always really good. Again, going back to that increased cardiorespiratory system. Pardon me. So runners also were found to have a 3-year higher life expectancy rate than any athletic or non-athletic person. So since you're a runner, that means you're gonna outlive me because I don't run.
Oh, please. You're Wonder Woman, but maybe, hopefully. Now, why specifically? What was the data behind that? Was it a stronger heart or better oxygenation of the brain and organs?
All of the above.
All of the above.
All of the above. That cardiorespiratory system really hits, right? So when you take care of your body, you're gonna live a little longer. There's a very good scientific reason for that, and it has to do with your telomeres, which I'm not gonna get into because that's a really in-depth thing.
Later episode.
Possibly, but if you really want a really good in-depth explanation, Rhonda Patrick, Dr. Rhonda Patrick, she's my favorite. She runs the Found My Fitness podcast, and she talks about it, and it's a really fascinating subject to learn how your cells age, and that there quite possibly could actually be a way to not necessarily reverse that, but extend your cell's life, which means longer longevity, which is great for most of us. So, shoes. Running shoes.
Now, why do you not like these? I know you don't. Why do you hate them?
These just, to me, again, going back to your point of like, you get what you pay for,
Yes.
right? These are good for like practicing in, but then again, you also want to practice in something you're going to use. It's kind of like when I pose, I still wear the shoes I'm going to wear on stage, right? These aren't as good a build, I think, as others that I've seen. The material isn't as high of a quality as what it is. And I don't like how much cushion you have here on the back because, again, that reinforces that heel first hit when we want to be ball of the foot, right? And I know they're trying to reinforce that motion versus the heel first, but people are seeing this and going, oh, versus my heel's supposed to be up because it's already raised.
Yep.
So they're not hitting properly. But there are benefits to actually having running shoes. And one of the benefits is a reduced risk of injury because they have this cushion on the bottom, and even these have this. It's going to absorb some of that impact so that it's not as harsh on the joints here, all the way up the leg. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not reading. You have a less risk of overpronation, which is what I did earlier, right? And we don't want that to happen. This is where the ankle rolls. That is bad. Extending everything. So a good running shoe has a slightly wider base like this one does.
Slopes down.
And it's gonna save some space so that if you do hit on your heel, you're less likely to teeter. We already talked about reduced impact, and the raised heel is supposed to take strain off of that Achilles and remind you to land from here forward. So we want the ball of the foot hitting first and keep pressure off of here to save our Achilles tendon. So that's really important. And you can even get ones with arch support. If you get ones with arch support, I just recommend that every now and then you take that out and let your foot actually do some work for you, right?
Yes.
So that's good. So on that note, there are actually some really good brands that I would say look into. One of them is the really popular, like we talked about them last time, the hookah shoes. Those are good, I would say, especially for like the older generations because their bones are a little bit more brittle. A lot of them start working out a little bit later in life in their 50s or 60s. Some of them even in their 70s. I've worked with some pretty up there in age clients over the years. And those are really nice cushion shoes. You're gonna get like a cushion like this. That's a good cushion.
Jeez.
Yeah, you're gonna grow like 2 inches with those shoes on. So those shoes they're light and responsive, and you can just get those, I think, on their website. There's also the Ultra, Rivera, and these are on Amazon, but they have a 0 heel to toe drop, which means they don't have this cadence here, right? And yours doesn't have it too much in the back, which is really good, so it doesn't go up, it's flat, and then it curves at the toe. So yours reinforce more of that hit the ball first versus hit the heel first. These ones are completely flat across, kind of like the lifter shoes that we see in our last episode that are made for squatting. So they look a little similar, but they're gonna be softer so that you have flexibility in them. The Metaspeed Sky, these are from Asics, and I think I talked about the Asics in the shoe episode, that they were a good running shoe, and those are really good for racing. So if you want to do like your marathons or your triathlons and stuff, I would probably suggest that shoe. That shoe's going to help you hit a little lighter and hopefully absorb some of your cushion. I don't know how to say this one. Saucony Peregrine. I've never known how to say that one. But these are really good trail shoes. I find that running trail shoes always have funky names. You can also get these ones on Amazon, but those are gonna be a good sturdy material so that as you're running, you're gonna get something a little more like this versus how flexible and light this is, where a twig can poke through here.
Very easily.
Yes, so we want something on trail runs that has some actual armor. Yeah, we want armor. Brooks Caldera 5s. These have plush cushion on them. You can just get them from their website, the Brooks Caldera sites. Those are probably best for like those quick power walks and stuff, right? For the more low intensity, like jogs. I wouldn't use those, I don't think, for like anything more than that. Normal everyday gait walking, right? Walking, that's what I said. Normal everyday walking, and maybe a little bit of power walking. I'm not a fan of power walking because it makes the hips go like this, and then you reinforce that like overextension of the hip into the ligaments and everything. So those are my suggestions for shoes. You got anything else, Steve?
I think that about does it.
Covered a lot on this one.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, it ties into, it really does just tie into everything. I mean, you start running when you're a kid, and
Yes.
some people don't stop, and that can be okay if you're doing it right. And
Yes.
there is a right way to run for your health and for everything else.
So that's the funny thing, as a child, starting at like age 2 or 3 is when we start developing our postural deviations and patterns that we're not supposed to be in. If a child is taught from this age how to squat properly, by the time they're this age, their body is going to stay in those proper movements. So in other words, children need to be in fitness at a young age. They actually already, if you watch an athletic child who hasn't been taught how to run, that's about 8 or 9 years old, they know how to run instinctively because the body already knows these things. We teach it other pathways to move that are very harmful. So if you're right, if you keep on running from a young age, by the time you get older, it's gonna feel like a breeze, and you may still love it, and that's okay. I'm not a fan.
You might love it.
But I'm not a fan.
No worries.
All right, warriors, I hope that helps you run on your next session or trail run, maybe even your next marathon. Got a question or topic you'd like us to cover? Drop it in the comments below. Visit us on our new Instagram. And don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you next time.